How's it going, everybody? My name is Jason. I'll be your host on this CFL talk show, Hussey's Huddle. In this video, we cover what the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have done this offseason to lock up their 2019 Grey Cup Championship core and what this means for a potential repeat in 2021. But really quickly before we get started, if you are new and you want to support the channel, the best way to do it is just by hitting that like button and subscribing to Hussey's Huddle for more CFL content just like this. With that said, let's talk about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So I'm just going to go over some of the highlights of Winnipeg's offseason prior to free agency here, and it's been a pretty busy list. It started a bit slow because they hadn't agreed to a restructured contract with quarterback Zach Collaros, but over the last couple weeks they've gotten that done, and it's really opened up the floodgates for a bunch of re-signings for Winnipeg. Let's just start with Collaros itself. Collaros is going to be this team's starting quarterback in 2021. And I have some concerns about Collaros as a long-term starter in the CFL, just given how he's been banged up over his career. He's had his history of injuries. He's not the biggest guy. And I just don't think building around him is necessarily the safest option. But at the same time, I'm not going to deny this. Collaros is 100% a starting caliber quarterback in the CFL. And he can play at an MVP level when he's healthy. That's how good he can be. But the problem is durability throughout his career. He's already had an ACL injury. He's had concussion in 2019. And I just worry about his long-term health and just overall ability to elevate this offense in the passing game. But that leads me to my next topic, and that is bringing back their pair of offensive tackles. And I can't really understate this. These are the best, by far, in my opinion. These are the tackle duo in the CFL with Jamarcus Hardrick and Stanley Bryant. Simply said, these guys are both CFL All-Star caliber players. Hardrick is probably the best run blocker in the league. But on the other side, Bryant is probably the best offensive lineman in the CFL. He's going to make the CFL Hall of Fame, I would assume. These guys are just so important to this offense considering how much they like to run the ball. And just having these two dominant tackles is just, you can't understate how valuable that is for Winnipeg. And then we go into the skill position, and yes, the highlight is bringing back Andrew Harris, who is getting up there in age. I think he's about 35. But the one thing about the CFL is the CFL is dominated in recent years by older players like Charleston Hughes. So I'm not too worried about Andrew Harris's age being a huge role in next season for Winnipeg. But then when you look towards the receiving core, and they've already brought back Nick Dembski, who is just an ultimate Swiss Army knife kind of player. I think he's kind of an undervalued player, even though, like, you look at his stats, he's not the most terrific. He doesn't put up these eye-popping numbers. But one thing is, he is a Canadian starter for this team. He allows them some ratio flexibility in that regard. He's super quick. He's agile. But he also, I've seen plays last year where they've actually even used Dembski as a lead blocker on runs for Andrew Harris. They use him in such creative ways. I'm interested to see how that changes now that Paul LaPolice, the offensive coordinator from last season, is no longer there. He's now the head coach in Ottawa. So I'm interested to see how the offense changes. But Dembski, super valuable piece for this offense. In 2019, because this wasn't a traditional pass offense for most of the year with Chris Streveler being the quarterback, they didn't really have any receiver that really dominated in terms of yardage. I think the highest guy was like Kenny Lawler. I think he had like 700 yards that year. But this is a very talented group. It has a lot of players that fit well together. I'm interested to see if they'll bring back another national receiver in Daniel Peterman, who I thought had some good moments as a young player in Winnipeg's offense early in 2019. At the skill position, I think this team is good enough, given the fact that they bring back those two offensive linemen that really can help secure this dominant run game and ensure that that's going to carry forward into the future. And then we look on the defensive side, and big ticket items here are that two biggest stars on this team, Willie Jefferson and Adam Bighill, they both agreed to restructure their contracts, take less money, so they're able to retain a few other guys on this defense. In particular, Jefferson was just a game record in the 2019 Grey Cup against Hamilton. And even though he is also getting up there in age, there's no doubt he's one of the best defensive linemen, defensive players in the CFL as of right now. and I just have so much confidence in him to be a game wrecker on a weekly basis that I think this defense is going to carry forward, especially now that they also bring back the other defensive end, Jackson Jeffcoat. And I think Jeffcoat, he's not a guy that gets talked about all that often in the CFL circles, but he's an excellent run defender. And I watch this guy. He's just so disciplined. He's just a very stout player. He can rush the passer as well. He's just very well-rounded defensive end. One that you need in the Canadian Football League that throws a lot of different formations at you. And defensive linemen, defensive ends can sometimes be exposed if they're not playing disciplined football. But of course, Big Hill comes back as well, and Big Hill, there's not much to say about him. He's just what he is. He's a great linebacker in the CFL game, and for the most part, he's been just a perennial all-star linebacker in the CFL, and so these veterans are just really key to this Winnipeg group on this roster, and this is why I have so much confidence in this team going forward. And then right beside him in the linebacking core, you have Kyrie Wilson, who kind of played that strong side cover linebacker role for Winnipeg in 2019. And Wilson, he's not the biggest guy, but he can fly. He can fly sideline to sideline. He's one of the best coverage linebackers in the entire CFL. And he just really gets a lot of depth in his drops. I honestly see him as a potential breakout candidate for an all-star team in 2021. And then finally, I want to finish off today with cornerback Josh Johnson, who they just recently re-signed this week. Johnson, I used to have a CFL blog, a website, but then eventually I decided to create YouTube videos instead. And on that website, I did an article prior to the 2020 season that obviously got canceled about my favorite signings from that particular last offseason. And Josh Johnson was one of my favorite signings. I think he was by far Edmonton's best DB on a pass defense that led the CFL in pass defense, I believe, in 2019. Re-signing really means to me is that the biggest concern I have with Winnipeg, and honestly quite a few CFL teams, there was a lot of talent that in the secondary that was signed in the NFL in 2019 after the 2019 season, such as Trey Roberson, Deshaun Amos, Winston Rose, and Marcus Sales, who comes back. He signed with BC. But for Winnipeg, they really needed to add another piece to that secondary. They needed to retain Johnson to give them some CFL experience in that secondary that's on paper doesn't look too sturdy. It looks like the weakest position on this roster. Having that security blanket in Johnson to be, he can start at corner, he can start at half. You can move him around, and he can be that Swiss Army knife defensive back player for Winnipeg, and he's been in the league for several years, and I just have so much confidence in his ability to perform for the Bombers in his first season with the club in 2021. And then, in terms of guys that they haven't really re-signed, I think Justin Medlock is one guy that they haven't brought back, and he's reportedly pondering retirement, I think I saw on one site, and that wouldn't surprise me. He's been in the league for a long time and was in the NFL for a bit. He's had a great career, and they did draft a kicker from Western, Mark Leggio, in the draft last year, so they might want to go with him. They put a Canadian kicker in there, use the Canadian national roster spot. Medlock is up in the air, but other than that, this Winnipeg roster looks primed to compete again in 2021. I'm not going to say that they're favorites to win the 2021 Grey Cup. I just have more confidence in a few other rosters that we'll get to in the coming weeks in the channel, but I just feel very confident in this ability. This is just a very high floor team because of their ability to run the ball, their ability to, rush the passer with Willie Jefferson. I just don't know if their explosiveness on offense, I don't know how this passing game is going to be in 2019, and I don't think you can win consistently doing the way that Winnipeg won in 2019 with more of a run-heavy approach with just some great defensive performances. Overall, I really like Winnipeg's chances to be at least competing for this Grey Cup again in 2019. Like I said, concerned about Kolaris's long-term health as this Winnipeg's franchise guy going forward, but overall it's been an exciting offseason here in Winnipeg, and I'm excited to see what they do in free agency. If they bring in anybody externally, maybe they add another explosive receiver Maybe they bring in a Greg Ellingson. I think that would be an interesting thing, but we'll see. I'm going to be doing a matchmaker video pretty soon, matching free agents to destinations in the CFL, so you don't want to miss that. So stick around on the channel for the next couple weeks. So that's going to do it for today's video. I'd like to thank you guys all for watching. Once again, my name is Jason. If you want to support the channel, the best way to do it is just by hitting that like button and subscribing to Hussey's Huddle for more CFL content just like this. Be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers' chances to repeat as Grey Cup champions in 2021. With that said, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.